Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm speaking to you from New Bedford, Massachusetts. I am a Vedic astrologer. I've been a Vedic astrologer for approximately 30 years, maybe one more, 31 years. I've also written on Vedic astrology. I've been the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology and the vice president of the Council of Vedic Astrology. So, I've also written in numerous publications, which I plan to start doing again very soon. I'm also an instructor at Kepler College and at the American College of Vedic Astrology. I have a doctoral degree in education, and I'm a New Bedford resident, proud New Bedford resident, proud Fall Riverite. And I'm here to talk with you about astrology and what's in the sky tonight. I'll have to take a great deal of care during this recording because Mercury just went retrograde. That's a common, that's almost a cliche. Even non-astrologers know about Mercury retrograde, uh, as well as full moons. But it is a bit of a cliche because it is true. Uh, communications do go awry during Mercury retrograde. However, they don't always get totally messed up. So a lot of the common wisdom that is expressed to people about not signing contracts, not starting things during Mercury retrograde is perhaps a bit overstated. It doesn't mean that things will necessarily go wrong, but there may have to be rewrites or amendments or revisions. Also, during some Mercury retrogrades, and a Western astrologer whose name I can't remember tipped me off to this, and as soon as I recall her name, I'll I'll definitely give her credit. But during Mercury retrograde, you can also experience bargains, so you can get good deals on things. It's generally considered not the best time to buy electronic devices, to buy anything that is connected with communications. I bought a car once during Mercury retrograde, but there was a lot more going on. I only had the car for about 2 years before it was totaled. That may say more about my driving skills than it does about the Mercury retrograde, but nonetheless, I have seen like big purchases, like enormous decisions being made during this particular period of time and not turning out well. That doesn't apply, however, to decisions that were made before the Mercury retrograde and they're getting implemented during a Mercury retrograde. So let's say you signed an employment contract or you ordered something through the mail before the Mercury went retrograde. It's not going to be that big a problem for you. It's just the actual activity or starting something during Mercury retrograde is usually a little bit problematic. And it will cause delays, obstructions, sometimes lost data. But again, if you're careful and you back up the information you're looking for or you're working on, excuse me, it'll tend to be much easier. So just keep in mind, back up everything you have. Watch out for electrical outages, and don't be surprised if, let's say, communications are a little bit confused during this period. Give me 1 second. I'm going to fix something. So that's a bit better. I thought space was a little darker than it usually was. So and again, that was a Mercury retrograde phenomenon. I forgot to turn on the light in the room, so the background was a little bit darker, and it was affecting the reaction time on the camera. So that's something. So we have a concrete example of what Mercury retrograde can do. It only just turned retrograde yesterday, and a bigger item is really, or a more significant retrograde actually happened when Saturn turned retrograde last week. But that will delay big projects um, or or make people do things over. It'll cause mistakes. It'll cause what I would call not big errors, but significant errors. It can also make people feel like life is a bit um, of a drudge. But on the positive side, debts can be forgotten or eliminated. People can repay debts that they've been trying to repay for a long time. So it does have some positives. The other thing, which is a really significant event, I think, is actually the fact that we're in basically between eclipses right now. So I'm gonna swap this. So we had an eclipse on May 26th. For a lot of people, it was kind of a doozy. And the reason I'm saying that is because I have been incredibly busy over the past couple of days with readings. That's a good thing. An astrologer wants to be busy with readings, but at the same time, people were also worried about their lives falling apart. So there were like big issues in their lives. So it wasn't, they weren't small things. And this eclipse, if you can see from the chart that I'm sharing with you right now, occurred in Scorpio. So that's Scorpio by definition. The eclipse occurred in a constellation called Anuradha. So it means during the eclipse, you actually received help from other people. But at the same time, it was sort of tense. The sun was in a lunar mansion called if I recall, let me just go back to that day. May 26th. The sun was in Rohini Nakshatra, so that'll give, and Venus was in the same sign when the eclipse occurred, and that's actually nice for people who are in love or who pursue beauty. It will make beautiful people seem more beautiful. It will make friendships very, very happy, but at the same time, it'll make people uncertain about what level of emotion they should show. So if you're involved with somebody and they seem to be doing sort of a dance between really, really liking you and being more along the line of friends, that's what's causing that. It's not really a bad placement, it's certainly so it's sort of like what Rahu does as a planet is to attract, then let go, attract, then let go. So Rahu is torn between personal happiness and worldly achievement. So whenever Rahu dominates the chart, the person may give up those things which make him or her personally happy in order to achieve big goals, like so I don't want to mention Donald Trump again, but Donald Trump has that kind of a combination in his chart. The other, sometimes you'll see people with Sun Rahu combinations or Rahu and Taurus combinations, especially over the past 2 weeks or so. We're having problems with personal happiness, with making career decisions, with figuring out their place in the world. Many people had planets, like big planets in Taurus, in the sidereal zodiac. And remember, the sidereal zodiac is about a 23-degree difference, or almost a whole sign difference, between the sidereal and the tropical zodiac, which Western astrology uses. So people who were Aries in Western astrology sometimes have their sun in Pisces in Eastern astrology. If their rising signs in Cancer, we'll go back to Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. There are usually, when I've looked at the charts carefully, there are mitigating factors which usually make the charts relatively similar. There are certain advantages that Indian astrology has, namely these things over here, the Mahadashas, and also the harmonic charts, which allow for fine-tuning if you have the right birth information in a Vedic chart. So in some ways, I think it actually makes prediction easier to use this particular form of astrology, but I won't disagree with anybody who says they find Western astrology easier to understand. It's really a matter of what you're drawn to and what your tastes are. But I like the Vedic system. The other thing is, during this period right now, Jupiter's, so as we're talking right now, and this is now Los Angeles chart, which I'm going to fix back to a now New Bedford chart. The other thing about this is if you look carefully at the Navamsha chart, the Navamsha is what's called a divisional chart, and it divides the sign up into 9 segments and assigns planets to the Navamsha based upon where they are in the birth chart. So the Navamsha, we still have that Moon, Sun, Rahu conjunction over here in the Navamsha. So a lot of people are worried or anxious. They feel like they're not satisfied with life, don't know their position in the world. But Venus is in its own sign, along with Mercury. So that makes communications, especially friendly communications, a lot easier. And Jupiter's in Sagittarius, which means we're ready to fight for our beliefs. So many people will look at Jupiter being just connected with wisdom or luck or happiness. It's also what's considered to be, they have a system in India, and I've mentioned this before, called Dhanurveda. Dhanurveda is the Indian art of war. Dhanu is the Indian name for Sagittarius. So if Jupiter's in this particular sign, people are ready to fight for belief. Jupiter's, a lot of planets have secondary and tertiary significations, which are not often discussed. And one of the tertiary and one of the secondary significations of Jupiter is the willingness to fight for a dogma or a principle. One of the secondary significations of Venus is to fight for one's family, or to fight to bring justice in an abstract sense. So even though they're benefic planets and they're naturally peace-seeking planets, they're not above conflict. And Jupiter has really been kind of a key actor in this pandemic. And one of the good things about Jupiter is Jupiter's finally moving into a sign which is connected with healing, and it'll be there for a while. As a matter of fact, if I show you this little diagram right here, Jupiter's inside of Visha Nakshatra. That's really good for healing. That's really good for coming up with 1,000 doctors or 100 doctors, but also 1,000 stars. So basically, this particular point in space is connected with wisdom and knowledge, especially old and ancient wisdom, but it's also one of the nakshatras connected with medicine. So you may see medical procedures get much more, you'll see actually more cures coming up for viruses and medicines over the next few months, not fewer. And this is also a sign that essentially through 100 different techniques. So we've had all these, a variety of these techniques connected with masks and social distancing. Yesterday, my home state, Massachusetts, lifted the restrictions for people to go to gather, and that makes people a little bit happier. It makes them feel a little bit more free. But there's a more important signification happening right now, and that is right now we have a Saturn Moon combination. So Saturn, you see right here, Moon is at 13 degrees 46 minutes. Saturn's at 19 degrees 19 minutes. The Moon is right over Saturn. So that tends to make people sad or locked in or trapped in a very significant way. It'll make them popular. It'll make them sane. It'll make them want to relax or even seek freedom, just to get away. But basically, if the Moon's with Saturn, it puts a lot of pressure on people, and you'll see a marked improvement within about, I would say, within about another day in terms of people's attitudes. They'll seem much more happy, much more benevolent, much more philosophical, much less pessimistic. And those combinations, you've seen a lot of ups and downs in the stock market. That's Rahu and Ketu acting on that. You've seen a lot of discussion at the government level. So we had a discussion in the United States in particular, about about setting a commission to investigate the January 6th activity. I'm not going to label it either way. I'm not going to label it as a riot or an insurrection. And you'll see a lot of, and that was mainly because Venus and Mercury were in this particular sign. After the Sun leaves around June 15th, Mercury will come back here, so you'll have a lot of panicky communications within a couple of days. But Venus will be out of that combination, and you'll start to see, and Mars is actually going to enter Cancer, where it'll become weaker, and so that should lessen the inclination towards war, although tempers will still be frayed over the next few days. But the Sun Rahu combination is really, there's a lot of resistance to trusting the government still. I think universally, it's not just in the United States. And also, at least from this combination, if Mercury goes with Rahu, you'll see a lot more panic about possible outbreaks and possible third and fourth surges of COVID. So just be prepared for that. The other, I'm not downplaying it. It sounds like I'm downplaying it. I'm not, but it's just really the media. If there's a Mercury Rahu conjunction, it just goes into panic mode. It's really what they do. And again, as I said before, most media, although they are actually devoted to giving you the news, most media serves a commercial purpose. sometimes it's better to keep people tuned in and frightened than to say everything's okay, because news is not scary, is not news. It's just everything's fine. You don't have to worry, and so we have a lot of worry about inflation, about and again, I'm not saying these aren't legitimate concerns, but inflation, about chips, having enough chips to go around, those kinds of things, and those are Mercury related as well. Jupiter's the inflationary planet. Jupiter aspecting Mercury and Venus will cause a little bit of inflation, but I think it'll abate by the end of the year. The other thing is, again, we have to keep something in mind. We've not only limited fuel production, not only was there a tanker lodged in the Suez Canal for the better part of a few months, but we're also coming out of an economy in which people weren't working and producing things. So just logically, there's a shortage of things right now that will raise prices. It's just, come on, folks. This isn't the toughest thing to figure out. If there's more money chasing after fewer goods, that causes inflation. That's really the definition. So in some ways, government spending has next to nothing to do with it. It's really the amount, the supply of. So back when I studied economics, there was something called push-pull inflation, which is essentially you push money out there that drives prices up. That happens to a certain extent, but I don't think that's what's happening right now. Essentially we have demand inflation because a lot of people have been spending money during the pandemic on food, on wood, on building materials. People are unemployed; they're not going back to work, so there's fewer supplies of fewer goods, and so fewer goods plus more money is a formula for inflation. But it's really the fewer goods that's driving it. It's not the more money that's driving it. Okay, so you can tell by my frustration that you can tell by that sigh that I'm a little bit frustrated by some of the arguments I'm hearing. And I'm not saying that government printing money can't cause inflation. It clearly can, but that's not the case here. If we had an oversupply of goods sitting in warehouses, it wouldn't be a problem. All right, so let's get back to this chart. So these are things to be cautious about. So just be cautious about communications, especially aggressive communications will be very strong for about a day or so. This will go away by tomorrow, but anxiety communications will come back again. Sun will be strong, but again, we're expecting an eclipse on June 10th, and I'm going to talk about that next week. But the June 10th eclipse, let me just go here. And I'm just going to give you a general indicator. I'm going to do more specific work on the June 10th eclipse. Next week. So the June 10th eclipse is really around. Let me see, I have it set up already. I'm sorry to do this to you folks. Let me see. No, I don't have it set up quite yet, but the June 10th eclipse is, yeah, I don't have that right now. So I'll have to set that up for next week. But the June 10th eclipse is, again, going to affect um, Moon, Sun, Rahu, Mercury, and Venus as well, because Venus and Mercury exchange signs. Venus is in Mercury's sign and Mercury's in Venus's sign. Jupiter's aspecting Venus, so there'll be a little bit more romance in the air, a little bit more fun in the air, but there'll still be anxiety about stocks, anxiety about um, about gains and people making enough money. And Saturn is in no way involved with this eclipse. It's in a trine to it, but it really doesn't. It directly impacts Rahu is the planet that comes closest to aspecting in K2. But unless you have planets which are around 15 degrees of Scorpio and Taurus, you're not going to be hit all that strongly by the eclipse. You may feel some negative emotional energy, and that'll last for about 3 days to 6 months, depending on your chart and depending on the major planetary period in which you that you're going through. But basically, it'll hit things connected with money and also with expenses for most people. So I'm going to go through each sign as we go through these things. But first of all, let's go back to the chart for today. Okay, and I want to see how it's going to affect the world. So May 30th, 2021. So, in the time since I started speaking to now, these rising sign change from it looks like it changed from Leo to Virgo. So it's 14. Right now it's 14. 14:01. This won't make a difference in terms of what I'm doing with the chart with the planets. Yeah, so it's definitely in Virgo. It was just on the border of Leo, just before. So this puts Jupiter. So we had Leo before, it puts Jupiter in the 7th house, which is great for communications with loved ones, great for new partnerships. And right now, it'll tend to put some roadblocks or some obstacles on that and maybe delay those new partnerships. But again, like I said, it's not really significant. Mars aspects the 1st house right now. Mars was aspecting the 2nd house of money before. So if we start with the reading that I was working on, it was actually a good time to start the reading. And I'm just going to ignore this particular layout and just go back to the Leo rising. Okay. All right. So let's just go back here. Now, if I take and I am going to be getting a new program, I hope fairly soon. So we'll have a more sophisticated look at this. But basically, if the planets I'm most concerned about right now are Sun Rahu lines. So we're having Sun Rahu lines going through Sun Rahu and to a lesser extent Mars. So we have Sun Rahu lines passing through Central America, Southern Mexico, Louisiana, and Arkansas, I believe, and all the way up through the north through Michigan. So we should expect to see some difficulty from Michigan, Ottawa down all the way to New Orleans, all the way down to Guatemala, I believe that is, and all the way down to Easter Island. Now, the other problems we're expecting to look at, we have Sun Rahu lines, is that the Sun and Rahu are passing by southern boot of Italy into Russia and into over by mostly through Russia. So we can expect some panic or some governmental problems in that part of the world, Greece as well, and Eastern Europe. So we'll see a lot of governmental disputes around that part of the world. Also in East India. So I'm not sure whether or not this is going to mean more revolts or more labor problems in East India. That's what it looks like to me. And we also have maybe a potential for conflict there. It looks like Bengal if I have my geography correct. And we also have Saturn lines passing through Delhi and Bombay, or close to Delhi and Bombay, and again up through Russia. So right around here in Russia or the former Soviet Union, we're expecting some hot spots or even some catastrophes. And we have a Mars line, so war will. Now, the interesting thing about this is I don't think we're going to see. Let me see what these two lines are. It's a Mercury and a Venus line going through the middle of Turkey and close to Israel, but not quite there. This is where Israel would be. So what we have here is really, there'll be communications or panic communications coming through this part of the world, through Turkey, north. And I think also Iran's going to see some violence, but in the far eastern portion of the country. So that's immediate. That's in the immediate future. And there's a Moon Saturn sign, so a lot of some of the violence or some of the unrest in India will be broadcast around the world. And we have some Sun Rahu lines passing over this line, which looks like a Mars line to me. So I think East India and China are headed for some domestic problems. Communications with China will be much stronger, but I think you're also going to see some new information come out of China over the next couple of weeks. That's not a tough forecast because we know they're investigating the origin of the coronavirus over the next few months. If you look back at the United States, and I apologize for jumping around a bit, but I'm focusing on areas which have potential for disruption first and panic. So it looks to me like the South Pacific will have some potential for disruption, around, I believe that's a U.S. possession, the Marshall Islands, I believe that is right there. And also communications problems with China and Vietnam and and this little area right here, which I apologize, I can't remember the name of it. And some panic about communications going through Egypt, Turkey, Russia. So Russia looks like it's going to get hit pretty hard this month, this week, these next 2 weeks, with a lot of different things. So does India. So does China. The United States isn't going to escape unscathed either. if we have a lot of activity over here in the Midwest, all the way down to Louisiana, this to me means some civil unrest and maybe some people trying to take on the government, or not necessarily overthrow the government, but question the government's validity. And communications issues will show up in New York City, and there'll be a scandal, a very definite scandal between New York City and Washington during this period of time. And a lot of it will start to come out. It'll be about 3 weeks before it fully matures, but you can definitely expect a new scandal to come out. And it won't necessarily be connected with the previous president. It'll be connected with current politicians or people who are in power right now. So the other thing is the Moon-Saturn conjunction over here. I'm a little concerned about it because this could indicate some tragedies at sea between, just to the west of California, and maybe even some earthquake activity roughly in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It probably won't affect anything, but that's where it looks likely. And again, Iceland has some problems still, which we may, and so does Greenland. So that's pretty much it. Oh, the one line I missed was a Rahu line going through Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and Spain and Portugal, and Northern Africa. So those areas are going to have to be careful about scandals or maybe even major political splits happening in the country. So there'll be a lot of dissatisfaction with the government in that part of the world. All right, so let's go back to the birth charts. But this eclipse will be very significant. There's going to be another eclipse later on this year, which we'll talk about later on. But these two eclipses, because we had because it's Scorpio and because it's Taurus, it'll affect wealth, and in addition, hidden wealth, and to a certain extent, espionage. So you're going to see an attempt in any event to destabilize a lot of governments around the world. Now, and we still have a Mars line going through Brazil. I apologize for not mentioning that. Mostly through Brazil. And we have Mercury and Mars lines going through Chile, Argentina, and I believe this is Peru, up into Colombia. So that part of the world is going to be hit with political scandals as well. But Mars hitting this part of Brazil, there's going to be fighting, possibly because of COVID, but I think more likely just because of ongoing civil unrest and income issues. And a lot of the issues connected out of Washington seem to be both race and immigration based. So I think you're going to see a lot more discussion about those things coming down the pike. It'll also extend to Cuba and Santo Domingo as well. All right, so let's get out of here, and let's look at the map for the various signs for this week. And Aries looks good for money, but again, less than satisfied with his financial position. Mercury and Venus and Mars are in the third house, so there'll be some fighting over communications issues. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Sun The moon rules the fourth house. So people are going to, people who are Aries are going to want to stay where they are, stay secure, focus a lot on work. Fifth house Lord is in the second house, so it's a good combination for financial growth. Sixth house Lord is in the third, so that means fulfillment of ambitions or desires with some obstacles. Seventh house is Libra. It's located in the third house, so a strong desire for relationship life for this sign. And Scorpio has K2, which is good for Scorpio, but it does give increased financial opportunities, but mainly through accidents. And Saturn and Moon are in the ninth house, so it'll mean change of boss or a more difficult boss to deal with. Mars in the 10th house, and Jupiter's in the 11th house, good for financial gains. For Taurus is very dissatisfied with his station in life, wants to make changes, wants to do away with existing arrangements. Financially, they'll be fights over money, fights over financial issues. In terms of home life looks, again, like I said, as I said, both signs will be this sign will be a little bit dissatisfied this month. Fifth house, Mercury's Lord of the fifth house, so children will be difficult to control, difficult to please. Sixth house, this is a house connected with, again, we're having arguments over money. K2's in the seventh house, so spouse or relationship partners will be very critical or very, just wanting to be on their own. Eighth house Lord is Jupiter. Lord of the eighth is in the 10th house, so career will be connected with unseen or investigative things. Ninth house has Saturn and Moon in it, and that gives some problems at home, some disputes at home. Jupiter is placed in the 10th house, so it should give an expansion of career life and financial gains from that. For Gemini has Mercury in the first house, which is good. It's what's called a Vajra Yoga, but it won't stay there long. But you will have a Parivadana Yoga or an exchange of lords between Mercury and Venus in this chart. And that will increase the sign's financial savvy. And also after the 15th, you'll see it start to accumulate a lot more money and a lot more eminence. The second house Lord is the Moon. So again, some feeling of constraint or being tied down, not being able to socialize. Third house Lord is the Sun, so that frustration is amplified. So people with this combination will feel kind of limited in terms of their ability to connect with friends. Fourth house is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in the first house, going backwards into the 12th house. So family will seem to be constrained or limited. Fifth house has to do with children. The Lord of the fifth house in the first house, so there'll be a lot of focus on children in this chart, maybe even some love affairs coming in. Sixth house has K2 in it, so the sun will have to watch out for stomach issues or stomach problems. Seventh house is Jupiter. Jupiter's well placed in the ninth house, so the person will probably connect with somebody who's well known or who's scholarly. Eighth house has Saturn, Moon in it, and that gives inheritances or legacies, but not of much financial value. And the 10th house does give this sign an overall boost to his career, but there is a danger it will spend too much money in order to boost his career with the Sun Rahu combination. So the money will be spent on unnecessary things. So that's this sign. Gemini in particular should check and make sure that what it's getting is what it really needs as opposed to what it wants. Cancer has no planets in the first house, but the Lord of the first house in the seventh. So this will give a lot of devotion relationship-wise. Relationship will seem to be pretty stable, although not the happiest. It at least looks reliable. Second house Lord is the sun. The sun's in the 11th house of friends. So this sign should be a little careful about friendships and who to trust. Third house Lord is Mercury, is placed in the 12th house. So that means a lot of ambitions will tend to get pushed to the side, or while the person focuses on career goals. The fourth house Lord is Venus. Venus is located in the 11th house, so like she give gains from foreign travels or from foreign countries. K2 is in the 5th house, so children will seem to be a little bit unruly or difficult to control. The 6th house has no planets in it. That's overall considered to be a good condition. This isn't bad for the chart. The 7th house Lord is very strong, and it'll make people stay in relationships even though they're not like supremely happy. 8th house has Jupiter in it. Jupiter's well placed in the sign. It'll give financial windfalls or financial boons from relationship partners. 9th house is Lord is Jupiter, so that'll give luck or interest in occult or secret knowledge. 10th house is Lord is well placed in the 12th house, so that means traveling or going to different countries for promotion of oneself. 11th house has a lot of money coming in. 12th house has a lot of money going out. So again, both this sign and Gemini should be really careful about finances, because it looks like you'll be spending a lot of money on trying to please people in relationships that can't be pleased, or on things you really don't need. And people will be lying to you and telling you you need to have these things in your life, and you really don't. So next sign up is Leo. Leo is in pretty good shape this month. The Lord is in the 10th house along with Rahu, so it'll give fame recognition. The second house Lord is in the 11th house. That's a Dana Yoga or wealth producing combination, so that's very good. K2's in the 4th. There will be some detachment or some isolation from family life. And Saturn and Moon are in the 6th, so the person should be careful about dietary issues. Jupiter's in the 7th. Good for relationship life, good for people meeting new people, good for business partnerships. Although business partners or relationship partners will seem a little strange or cold. And the Sun Rahu conjunction gives more fame on the job and more more people paying attention to you. If we go down to Virgo, Virgo has a cluster of planets in the 10th house, so this sign will be very career driven this year or this month. K2's in the 3rd, so it's pretty fearless. Saturn Moon is in the 5th, so not a lot of happiness for children, although children will be famous or well known. 6th house has Jupiter in it. This gives good potential financial growth, but with some effort. And 7th house Lord is Pisces. The Lord of the 7th and the 6th isn't necessarily a bad combination, but it is very generous. Or he does make the sign very generous, excuse me. And the 8th house, the 9th house has Sun and Rahu in it, so it'll be a kind of demanding, tough to please supervisor. but career life will blossom. If we go to Libra, Libra has K2 in the second house, so it'll speak rather quickly and rather shortly, maybe misunderstood. Saturn and Moon are in the fourth house, so home life will be a little bit depressing. Jupiter's in the fifth. Love affairs and romantic involvements, and also children will be very strong for this chart. Sun is in the eighth house, so not really a good combination for friendships, but essentially good for gaining legacies, although it'll be a little bit less than you thought. Ninth house has Mars, Mercury, and Venus in it. So the ninth house indicates new teaching or new learning, but also an increase in luck, especially through property. 10th house has the moon in it, so work life will be hard, but not unbeneficial. And let me just see now. And the 11th house gives good financial gains. 12th house, again, there's this tendency to spend too heavily on learning, but this is not a bad chart for Libra. For Scorpio, K2's in the first, Rahu's and Sun are in the seventh. So again, relationship issues still pop up for this sign. So there'll be a lot of arguments, unfortunately, and also relationship partner will try to take advantage. So one relationship partner will try to take advantage of the other. It's based on your chart as whether or not that'll be your sign, but you have to be careful about secret messages and secret communications. Saturn and Moon are in the third house. Jupiter's in the fourth, so that gives an optimum combination of courage and wealth. And we have Mercury, Venus, Mars in the eighth house. Good for winning property settlements, although the decision may be delayed for a few weeks. And overall career life looks fine, although there will be a little bit of dissatisfaction or difficulty with partners. Sagittarius has Saturn and Moon in the second house. The Lord is in the third house, so this sign will be very ambitious to learn new things and accomplish new things this year. Sun is in the sixth house along with Rahu, so there are some minor health ailments which are passing, especially energy levels will seem a little bit low. Relationship life looks difficult, though, again, for a lot of signs, it looks difficult this month. And it's mainly because of Mars being in this seventh house. But you know what, within about a week, it'll move into Cancer. It'll seem still difficult, but the relationship partner won't be quite so angry or quick to temper. And in terms of 10th house, which has to do with career life will actually start to improve over the next couple of months. So you'll start to see kind of a fallback between now and June 21st, but then a resurgence in career growth after that. For Capricorn has Saturn and Moon in the first house, and Jupiter in the second house has good for income. Sun and Rahu in the fifth house are good for financial success of children, although children will be tough to please. Venus, Mars in the sixth house. Again, a lot of the signs will have to watch out for stomach ailments or lung ailments over the next month or so. And in terms of relationship life, the sign will be obsessed with relationship matters over the next month or so. And the last thing I want to look at is Venus being in the sign's sixth house. Career life will be a little bit tough, and friends will be a little bit unsteady. Aquarius has basically a good month, although there would be a little bit of disruption in home life and maybe some fibs from romantic interests, and um, again, lack of recognition in career matters and a lot of expenditure of money, but not a bad month. Finally, Pisces, a lot of arguments at home, but a lot of courage, and relationship life looks difficult, but career life looks basically good. So there'll be some travel through career and some long-term financial gains through career. So that's it for this week. I have to sign off quickly. If you want to contact me for reading, 508-525-0001. Thanks and have a great week. Namaste.